最厉害，最厉害。
Ça fait forum has been held in West Africa. It's been in East Africa and South Africa before, and would therefore like to thank the Media Foundation West Africa, who are partners this year, for making this happen. Thank you for partnering with CIPESA, providing the various invitation letters, and in general helping us to get this event together. We're here because of you. It'd be very unfortunate for us to talk internet freedom in Africa if we all didn't have access, at the very least in this room today. Do we all have access to the internet today? If it's because you don't have a smartphone, but if it's because you don't have, so is it because you don't have anything that will help you connect? Who does not have access? Okay, so you don't have but it's showing you the internet is down. Okay, we're going to try and have that rectified. We apologize for that. Okay, we'll send out a copy of this, and you can then try and get connected again. So for the last 2 days, what's been happening, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, have been pre-event activities with insights that are feeding into what's going to be part of the discussion for the next 2 days. We thank you for all understanding how important this forum is and making your way to Accra, Ghana for this forum. I was speaking to somebody earlier today, and they were telling me their passport has been waiting for 8 years for this event. This has been the first time they've traveled out of their country, and it's been for this particular event. So I'd like to congratulate them on their maiden visit outside Uganda, and we hope that it will be worth it. So the forum is growing. In 2014, 80 people from 6 countries attended that forum. In 2017, 250 from 35 countries. In 2018, we are still expanding the conversation in Africa. So by representation, if I could ask you to put up your hand, or if you'd like, you can stand. Well, let's see how it's done in your different areas. Who of you are from South Africa, from Southern Africa? Okay. Okay. Who of you are from North Africa? Wow. We did. They're on their way? It's very far. Okay. Who of us is from West Africa? Wow. And this is the first time that we're in West Africa. Who is from Central Africa? Okay. And who is from East Africa? Now we know those are the loud people in the room. Every time somebody does something, that is East Africa. Okay. So here are some housekeeping rules. There is a code of conduct that we would like to observe. It's very strict, and we'd like you to appreciate that it is there for a reason and respect it. That code of conduct has been, I believe, shared with all of you. It is also on the website. Please take a moment and read it. There is a guide to communication, behavior that is unacceptable, and where you can report any incidents that happens that makes you feel maybe harassed, or if you have any concerns or information that you would like to share. The contacts for who you can share all of that with are on the website under the code of conduct. There is also a privacy policy that must be respected, and we also ask that you wear your name tags. Do we all have name tags? Oh, okay. If you don't have a name tag, we ask that you please get it from right at the back before you get in. It will be very important for us to know who we are speaking to, who we are interacting with. If I forget, I want to be able to just pretend and look at and then say your name and you feel, So please, let's try and get these name tags. The toilets are outside on your very right. You'll see them. Wi-Fi, we're trying to get that fixed. Hashtags, very important for this forum. So if you'd like to share your thoughts on your vision for internet freedom in Africa, use the hashtag Internet Freedom Africa. And the event hashtag, the general event hashtag for this year is FIFA Africa 18. Please go online and let's tell the world what we'll be talking about for the next 2 days. Should you need any assistance whatsoever, please reach out. Juliet, I don't know if Juliet is in the room. Okay, I'm sure some of you know Juliet. Most of you know Juliet. Ashna? Ashna, I'm sure she's, would call her. We'd like to recognize Ashna right there, she's jumping up and down in pink. That's Ashna. Felicia. That's Felicia over there. If you'd like any help and I can't help you, those are the people to go to. They'll be able to assist you and answer all the questions you have. We will be live streaming and the links are going to be shared on social media. And then we'd like to thank our partners and our sponsors. I will be mentioning those as we go along. But for now, I'd like to welcome Mr. Suleimana, who is the Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa, the leading freedom of expression and media development organization in West Africa, and also the co-host for FIFA Africa 18.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone, and I must say a hearty welcome to our beautiful city, Accra. On behalf of my colleagues at the Media Foundation for West Africa, we are extremely delighted to have all of you here in Accra. And to those of you who are from Ghana, I believe I can say Akwaba to all of you. Across Africa today, as we all know, more and more people are getting the power to participate in public discourse, to engage in governance conversation, to demand accountability from duty bearers, and to make their voices heard. And this is happening as a result of the increasing penetration, access, and use of the internet and digital tools. Certainly, this is an overwhelming and a welcoming development on a continent that continues to struggle in terms of good governance, in terms of citizens' participation, in terms of accountability, and in terms of making sure that the vast natural resource endowment that we have are put to the benefit of the citizenry. Recognizing the importance of the internet, I believe everyone does. But also across Africa, as more and more people are getting empowered through the internet, duty bearers are also exploring ways to make sure that, people are limited in terms of the extent to which they get the opportunity to demand accountability and to have a voice in governance processes. And so it's either the net is being shut down, as we know has happened on a number of occasions in Cameroon, and of course in Uganda. And when my colleague here was asking how many of us have access, knowing that she is from Uganda, I hope that she wasn't thinking there has been a shutdown here. Ghana, it doesn't happen. And apart from the phenomenon of shutdowns, we also recognize increasingly the tendency of governments and security agencies to arrest arbitrarily, quite often, detain, harass, or beat up bloggers, social media activists, citizen journalists, and a recent report that we issued talked about what has happened in Benin, what has happened in Senegal, what has happened in Mali, and quite a number of countries. Certainly, this is a worrying trend. But of course, we do appreciate that governments predominantly in Africa would always want to have their way. And therefore, the trend where citizens through the internet are getting more and more empowered would certainly be something that they would want to counter. And I think that is why we feel quite delighted to have the opportunity to host all of you here in Accra, to have a conversation over the next 2 days about the trends. What are the things that are happening on the continent? What are the challenges? In what ways can we empower each other to ensure that we are able to counter all the pushbacks that are being rolled out, be it in the form of laws, in the form of policies, in the form of all manner of repression in terms of detentions, arrests, beating people, and so on and so forth. And we also know that governments would at all times try to use national security as an excuse to try and limit the spaces for citizens' participation and citizens' voices. And we know that countries are at the moment developing cybersecurity policies, cybersecurity laws, and so on and so forth. And this is the time we must engage. This is the time we need to have a conversation. This is the time we need to empower each other to understand how we can engage these stakeholders or these duty bearers as they go on with the development of these policies, these pieces of legislation, and so on and so forth. And so for me, it's a great moment to continue the conversation around internet freedom in Africa. And it is my hope and belief that over the next 2 days, we would be able to identify what the critical challenges are, what the prospects for the future are, and how collectively we can mobilize our energies, synergize our efforts towards ensuring that we have an internet ecosystem that is free and that allows people to continue to engage in the things that matter in their lives. Once again, thank you very much, and I wish all of us a very fruitful deliberation over the next 2 days.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suleiman Brahima from MFWA. So I would like to very quickly call upon Dr. Wairiagala Wakabi from CIPESA. He's the Executive Director, the host of the host organization, and he has extensive experience in integrating ICT in communications and development work. Dr. Wakabi? Okay. And as he makes his way here, have we received the papers that have the password for the Wi-Fi? We have? If you haven't received it, it's coming to you. Or just ask the people behind you. Please don't selfishly keep it. When you're done, send it to the front and let somebody else also have access.
Thanks, Josephine. I don't know about the alleged extensive experience, but I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad that all of us are here for the Forum on Internet Freedom in Africa. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. We would very much want to thank the Media Foundation for West Africa for co-hosting this event. They did a lot of work to enable us to be here, and I would like to give them a thunderous round of applause at the beginning of this session. Some special people contributed too, but we don't have to thank those ones now. Ghana, I think, is as suitable as any other country to host FIFA Africa. For those who have a bit of understanding of the history of this continent, Ghana led the independence movement. They got their independence in '59. They helped the rest of the continent in their struggles to gain independence. Today, Ghana remains a shining example on the continent in terms of how to govern well. They don't have fractures or violent transfers of power. They don't have shutdowns when they have elections. Their media credentials are very good, at least by African standards. And presidents don't change constitutions or fiddle with other sorts of laws in order to remain in power. Ghana has also a very interesting motto: freedom and justice, if I recall correctly. Yeah. I'm told that that is what it is. Freedom and justice are really the issues which the Forum on Internet Freedom in Africa strives to promote. As my brother Suleimana said just a few minutes ago, these are worrying times for Africa. not all of Africa. We have exceptions such as Ghana that are really doing a lot in terms of good governance, but in much of the continent, these are worrying times in terms of governance. There are a lot of governance problems which are related both to the online world but also to the offline world. The harassment and arrests of opposition actors, of critical voices, of journalists, the misuse of state resources, and a lot of other negative developments. So the internet and other digital technologies have become one of the medium through which many of us that live in countries with democracy deficits are able to have a level of confidence to speak out, organize, mobilize without much fear of reprisals. But that's changing, unfortunately, in many countries as states increasingly criminalize online behavior, as they increasingly monitor what citizens are saying on social media platforms, as they ramp up their capabilities to conduct surveillance on critical voices, on even ordinary citizens that may not really, in our view, present any kind of legitimate threat to government. And so we convene this forum to be able to have more actors that care about freedom of expression and the free flow of information in Africa to discuss the problem that we are encountering, to find ways of collaborating better in terms of addressing those problems, to generate evidence and document the abuses and violations that are taking place, and develop strategies where we can be able to offer protections wherever we can to those who are at risk from their governments because of their activities, both in the online domain but also offline. This is year number 5, I think, as you heard, that we have organized this forum. And we have a number of successes we can point to. The 250 individuals who we had have attended the last session in Joburg. Many of them, when they return home, they don't just show off the souvenirs that they may have picked up on their travels. They engage with other actors in terms of training them. They speak out on any violations that are happening. They collaborate with us and other individuals they meet here to provide alternative views on the laws and practices that are undermining freedom of expression and internet freedom in their countries. And they help to document what governments are not doing right. And they help to increase the amount of information in the public domain on internet freedom issues, which is a critical component of growing the cadreship of people that are speaking against these internet freedom predators. So we look at this forum, therefore, as a way in which to create and expand the pool of internet freedom leaders in Africa. Someone told me that the name Ghana comes from Warrior King. Our hope is that we will not just, when we leave this place, we will not just have expanded the pool of internet freedom leaders, but expanded the pool of internet freedom warriors. Because the times we are living in, while interesting, they are also exceedingly worrying. In Nigeria, and I'm summarizing, I'm finalizing, they have a saying about a bird called the Eneke bird. The Eneke bird said, since man has learned to shoot without missing, who knows how it ends?
They have also learned to fly without perching.
Since man has learned to shoot without missing, the Eneke bird has learned to fly without perching. Governments in our countries are increasingly shifting the strategies that they use to monitor citizens' communications. They are increasingly developing new tactics, new technologies, new capabilities. As civil society, as private sector, as legislators who care about advancing freedom, because we have legislators here, as regulators who also care about advancing freedom of expression and the freedom of information, we must continuously look out for new ways in which to counter the newly acquired tactics and technologies by governments that predate on internet freedom. And so I thank everyone and hope that we'll have a very, very fruitful FIFA Africa 18. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wakabi. And while we think of these fruitful deliberations that we're going to have, I would like to recognize the supporters that have made this happen, some of the sponsors. We have Small Media, Ford Foundation, ISOC, Association for Progressive Communications, UNESCO, GIZ, Facebook, Open Technology Fund. This is also happening in partnership with Internews, Access Now, Localization Lab, Media Legal Defense Initiative, NetBlocks, International Media Support, ICT for Democracy in East Africa, and Council of Europe. When Dr. Wakabi and Suleiman were speaking about internet freedoms, they brought to mind the Zone 9 bloggers. Are they here? Zone 9 bloggers? Okay. We would especially like to welcome you to this event. Is this the first time that you'll be speaking publicly since your release? Well, we are more honored even then to know that. So they will be sharing their experience in one of the breakaway sessions. I'm not telling you to leave the other sessions for this one, but I'm just telling you that they will be speaking. So again, as we speak about internet freedoms and the shutdowns that have been mentioned, we'd like to show you a small film. It was shot in Cameroon, in the English part of Cameroon, and it was produced by Ndenge Gordon Zama. This was in 2017. It has been, that was recorded as the longest internet shutdown ever. So let's have that playing on the screen. Is it ready? It's a 20-minute film, and if you could take note of things that you'd like to ask the producer, he'll come and speak to us briefly after that. Okay. So it's taking a bit of time to download. I'm hoping that it will be able to download. I think the internet is not just affecting all of us with our phones and gadgets, it's also gotten that far. So allow me to welcome our keynote speaker. And as he makes his way, I'll tell you a bit about him. He's a publisher, curator at Africapedia, Kenya, and is also developing a museum project, The Wall of Great Africans, part of which is on Facebook at WOGA1884. He studied at Makerere University, Uganda, American University in Cairo, Egypt, and was a Neyman Fellow at Harvard. He's a founder and managing editor of the Daily Monitor Uganda. In 2003, he moved to the Nation Media Group in Nairobi as its first managing editor for Media Convergence. In 2014, he joined Mail and Guardian South Africa, launching its Mail and Guardian unit. In June 2016, he started up Africapedia. He writes weekly columns for the Monitor Uganda, Daily Nation Kenya, The Citizen Tanzania, and regional weekly, The East African. He is the author of 4 books. He's a director of the Institute for Economic Affairs, IEA, Nairobi, and a member advisory board of Hacker Space iHub, Nairobi. Well, since he refuses to leave his chair, I'll tell you a bit about him. So yesterday, and as fast as you can get, I'll tell him the story. Should I tell him? Okay, so let me tell it. Yesterday I saw him at the airport, and then he saw me. This is how good he is with the internet. He saw me, I saw him, and we thought we know each other, but well. He didn't say anything, and I didn't say anything. Until much later, do you want me to carry on, or do you want to come? You want to stay in your seat? Okay. So we took our time until eventually he sends me a message and said, but did I see you? And I know it's very difficult for many people to recognize me without makeup. So maybe that was the problem, and I will forgive him for that. So he sent a message and said, I think I saw you. That is the power of the internet. That now we will avoid those awkward conversations and save them for the DM on Twitter. So ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome Mr. Charles Onyango Obo from Afripedia.
We are very, very big on Apple. So if you go to an event in Nairobi, probably 95 or 99% of the people will have Macs. And so it has caused me a bit of a problem. But let me see if I can sort it out here. Okay, I think here. I'm trying to put a little thing so that I can't play. So thanks again. Since we are in Ghana, I just thought that it would be important to commiserate with our brothers and sisters about the passing away of Kofi Annan. So our condolences. But the thing about Kofi Annan, no, just wait, keep it there. That is a picture that was taken of Kofi Annan in Nairobi, Kenya in February 2008. Kenya had had an election, and like Kenyans do, they had cheated each other and had and they failed to agree who had won. So they had their first, it was the most violent political eruption in Kenya since the end of the Mau Mau War. So it was a very traumatic period. So Kofi Annan was asked to mediate. And that photograph was taken when he was walking from the venue of the meeting to his hotel. And it was a very, very dramatic moment in the process because Nairobi was a half a ghost town and the confidence levels were very, very low. So I think that the genius of Kofi Annan, he was able to understand that if he walked for 1 kilometer from the venue to his hotel, it would have a very, very dramatic effect. And I remember when in the newsroom and we said, wow. So that is probably one of the most famous walks in the park in Africa. And it was very dramatic, the mood change that happened in Kenya and the credibility that Annan got from that simple act. But the thing is that that's a very difficult image to find. You will, I think, find only one or two on the internet. And I think that that is very important for today because, as we will see later, we really have to be thankful that the internet doesn't forget. Because politics in Africa and other places forget. And as I will illustrate that that is a very important cause of the conflict between power and the internet. Sure. So, I have a view that unlike many people, I don't tend to get depressed by repression. And like Wairagala said, you know, the situation in Africa is very difficult for freedom of expression generally, both online and offline. But I suspect that the reason why the CPESA people insisted is that one of the things I take the view that every generation must be happy to have a fight. And I think that for this generation, your fight is the internet. We had ours. And if you look at it that way, the pain becomes less. And I think that one of the reasons why CPESA asked me to come is about, I don't know whether it is for the digital work I do or from my battles over press freedom, because by the time I left Uganda in 2002, I had at that point either been arrested or gone to court more times than all the journalists combined in 40 years of Uganda's independence. So I had quite a bit of notoriety, but it didn't bother me. I just used to pack my bag with prison clothes, anti-malarials, and vitamins, and so that was my constant package in the car. So it never distracted us. So I think that, and I'll comment at the end, that we should really see it as it's good to have a fight to fight. That once you have a society where you don't have a fight to fight, you are in serious trouble. Next. Now, they are, when the list of enemies of the internet comes up, in Africa, you know, those are the, you know, they are characters who come on and off. But in recent years, those generally tend to be on the list. But Ethiopia is different because Ethiopia, I think, is probably on the path to getting off the list. And Tanzania, I think, will probably get higher on the list because the situation is deteriorating. But if you think carefully about particularly Ethiopia and Tanzania, and that list in general, is that that list does not actually tell you so much about what's happening in the internet, but what is happening in the politics of those countries. So that ultimately, internet freedom is at base a discussion about the politics and the democratic health of countries. And I would also therefore like to caution that the language about the internet, the enemy of the internet, is actually based on a grand myth. And that myth is that the dictators don't get the internet. They don't appreciate it, they don't understand this way the 21st century, they are unschooled. Next. But it's actually wrong. Because the dictators understand the internet. And in fact, I would want to make the argument is that they understand it better than the good guys. And in many ways, that's a good thing. And you know, and if you think about it, you know, in terms of your strategy, when you think that the dictators actually understand the internet and they are much smarter about it, then you begin to base your analysis on very different parameters. Next. So, why is the internet important? You see, I spend a lot of time doing how does technology in general affect social and political and other trends. And one of the things that we really need to understand is there is something which I call the digitocracy. Is that the digitocracy in Africa is become, in many countries, the most influential bureaucratic element of the state. And this has happened in situations where, and I think Wairagala and all these messages, that one of the changes that is happening in African politics and society is with all this demographic youth and all this innovation space. They are people who are very, very smart in the internet, and their power inside the structures of parties and government has grown because of their ability to work with the internet. And you know, the most classic example of this is what happened in Uganda in 2011 election. It was, I think, President Museveni, Yoweri Museveni's most convincing victory. And it was delivered by the digitocracy. And then, along with the digitocracy, and there's been a reference to this, we have a whole new group of elite inside and outside who form part of the wider surveillance securitocracy. And these people do actually want a free internet. They don't want it to be shut down. And they have become very smart, and we don't have to go into weaponizing this for, you know, in social media during the elections. Now, why is it a problem? It's a problem because political leaders have seen that this is a new fault line within which the ruling parties and the state redistributes internal power. So what happened in Uganda in 2011, after the digitocracy had won in 2011, they fought them. And in 2016, they lost completely. So this is a major fault line that, as you know, we go into the 21st century, the old and the new is fighting. And the classic example of this comes from, next please. There is a very, please can we? I saw Grace. Is Grace here? I saw her on the speaker list. Ah, yes, yes. Grace did actually has some very, very fascinating insights on this, and I put the title, you can search there, and the URL. Because Grace actually makes the point, which is, I don't put it up there, that actually fake news has generated a very important kind of narrative. Because one of the things that, there are certain things which are not said in polite African society and other societies, but they're only said by fake news. But because the fake news says it, it gives us an opportunity to confront it. But then she also makes another argument, and it goes back to the point we made earlier, that because of the rise of the digitocracy, in Kenya in 2017, whereas there were fears and the conditions seemed that they would shut down the internet, they did not, because the government was the greatest beneficiary of fake news. Because they have gotten so good at doing this thing, you actually are beginning to see that within states and security structures, there are now people saying, no, don't shut it down because we are winning this fight. So, as we process the challenges to internet freedom and work online, we actually need to be aware of these shifts, and that states have instrumentalized the internet and the digital space in ways in which a lot of people who work for democracy and expansion of expression don't fully appreciate. So, that is one. The second, and this is one thing I spend a lot of time, one of the things that strikes me is the extent to which there has been secession. Is that if you actually think that the biggest existential threat that the dictators see is that there are large groups of Africans who have seceded from the state as is. But they are not fighting the old Biafra war. They have seceded through creating basically new countries and territory in the digital space. And they are transferring their emotional maps. They are transferring their loyalties to these communities. And you've all heard, I think there is, who are the Nigerians in the room? Yeah, this is a very interesting example of Lola or, Molola's, and this is an invitation-only group. And, it's, when she started it, she was basically saying she would be lucky if she would get 1,000 people. Now she has over 1 million. And, she was so big, Mark Zuckerberg had to call her for a meeting. So, if you research this, they're very interesting. We spend a lot of time in Kenya talking about a group called Kilimani Moms. There is a lot of reporting, there is a lot of, and a leak from Kilimani Moms becomes a big story. But Kilimani Moms is a closed group. And it is just incredible, basically it was started by what was supposed to be stubborn and free-spirited wives. I think it still is. But it is just very incredible the extent to which it is shaping social conversation and morals, what Kenyans consider the public morals. So there is, and if you talk to people who are in charge of state policy and security policies, to them one of the biggest problems are these closed groups, because they think that more than political parties and all these kind of things, it is what is happening in these groups that is really killing them. There is a very famous one in Egypt, Confessions of a Married Woman, and perhaps the most classic one is the case that was reported out of Iran, because Iran, they are good God-fearing people, and there are certain vices which are discouraged, drunkenness and prostitution and all those kind of things. So last year there was this crackdown on these on Twitter, sorry, not Twitter, on WhatsApp group and Telegram and Signal. But the most famous one was this woman. They attacked her house and basically forced her at gunpoint to open her device. And on Signal, she was running a group where there were 600,000 people. And guess what the group was about? Every end of the day, she would go and stand before a mirror and post a semi-nude photo of herself. But there were 600,000 Iranian men in this God-fearing country who had subscribed to that group. So if you begin actually to think of it, what if you have a country with a moral police, if you are closing down and something like that is happening from an individual's device, how much really are you in control? So it's a very subversive space, and there is the argument for this protection, but I think that powers do recognize that this can be the source of power running away from them. It's something that we should celebrate. Next. And I think more importantly is, and it goes back to the run thing, because political power requires a certain level of amnesia. Not a certain level of amnesia, a lot of amnesia. You need to forget past injustices. You need to forget lessons of the past. But I think that one of the biggest difficulties that the internet is posing to political leaders, that the damn thing doesn't forget. And it has kept memory alive. So whenever there are some atrocities, I mean the things we are seeing in Cameroon now, and the things which are being dredged up. Recently, that guy, he's called African Curators. I don't know how many of you followed this. I think it eventually came, I think it went to the 1,000. He basically asked these people to post the most ridiculous thing done by African politicians. And it was incredible. Within hours, it was striking for just how much people are able to go back into their history and dredge up acts of outrage by African politicians. And I think that, it has harnessed the power of satire. Memes have become a nuclear weapon in the hands of citizens. And it is a contest which we can complain about, but we can only expect that the battle for it will continue. Next, please. And so I think that because of the various tendencies we have seen within state structures, the struggle over political narrative, the struggle over memories, really, in many respects, African presidents today rule over the bodies of their citizens, not their souls. And therefore, for me, it is not a surprise that there is internet repression. I would have been horrified and surprised if there had been none. Next. And so we go back to the point which I started. That I think that it is for the people who are active in a frontline way in this space. This is really your battle. Every generation in Africa and all countries has its fight. The guys fought independence. From after the end of the Cold War, there was a whole generation of people who fought for the so-called second liberation. At one point, Africa was excised about the liberation of Southern Africa. And I actually think that for this generation, rather than whine and mourn, I think you should. But I think that this is really your fight. And you should fight it, and you should win it. And you can. Because I remember it's at one point at the height of our struggle, I mean, it got so ridiculous that when I would come to court, the court officials would go and chase people away from my seat. I mean, it's ridiculous. So there was a seat, and you get to a point where you are now bringing presents for court clerks and the court police. That's how long we had been there. But it was really remarkable, because at the end of the day, in one particular case, we fought. And after 7 years, I think we won what was the most significant political victory in the Commonwealth in a ruling in the Constitutional Court. And it's a good victory. And I think that for people who are in a frontline way in the digital space, you should also look for similar joy. Thank you. So I'm free now, I can sit, or? No, if there are no questions, I can answer.
Would you like to? Does anybody, I'll just give one person an opportunity to ask him a question. Nobody?
Hello. I congratulate you for surviving the struggle up to now. I think what doesn't make some of us fight is fear. How do you handle fear in this struggle? Thank you.
I don't know. At one point, it was because I was young and foolish. But it gets you know. Let me you know, an example. In 2001, we ran a story, and so they sent the army and the military police and the regular police, and they closed the suburb where our office was. And so they closed the roads and all that, and they took control of the printing press. Now, at that point, I was I was trying to do a story, and I'd visited the farm of a minister. So when they called at the office, they said that the army has taken over the office and the printing press. So the minister told me, you know, we can arrange for you to run away. And I said, of course, after fighting all these years, I'm not going to run. So I got in my car and I went home and, hugged my wife and daughters, and I drove to the press. But by that point, it was 8 p.m. So my car drives up and the lights, and I see all these many soldiers and guns, because the lights, it was hitting the guns, and they were. So I drove up to them, and they said, this area is closed, you can't get in. I said, but I work in this place, and, you should let me through. So the soldiers at the roadblock let me through. So our office was an enclosure, so I drove into the office, and the military intelligence officer who was in charge comes up to me, and he asks me, what the hell are you doing here? And I said, I hope, but I told him, but you are looking for me, aren't you? And he said, yes, but he said, I didn't expect you to be here. So for the next 2 months, they just didn't know what to do, because they just probably thought I was crazy or had a death wish. But I think that they just didn't expect that I would show up. So how does one survive? I just think that it is people who struggle for press freedom often underestimate how much the odds are in their favor. Is that you are actually the stronger person. And if you are clever about it, you can actually fight and come out. Okay, there'll be, days in jail, occasion bruised faces and ribs. But at the end of the day, you will survive. Thank you.
Mr. Obo, you say this is our fight, internet freedom. Should we be young and foolish? We should be young and foolish. Well, may the odds be ever in our favor, like you said. So we were expecting somebody from the Ministry of Communications. We've been waiting on him, and we hope he'll make his way here to give us some remarks at some point later on today. We'd been told he'd be here at 10, but we'll just continue with the program and hope he finds us along the way. I would like to now invite 3 people to share with us their unique perspective on insights on this forum. I'll invite Hugh Xianghong from UNESCO, Grace Bomu from Kictanet, and Peter Asari Nuama from Pan-African University. If you'd like to come and take your seats up here, we'll kick off the next session. Feel free to take any comfortable seat. Yes, let's put the man in the middle and make him uncomfortable. Is it okay? Okay. So they're going to be sharing with us different insights into the forum. I'd like them to introduce themselves, and one by one you can start to tell us what you'd like us to hear from you. Who would like to go first? Usually they say ladies first, but that's when it favors the man. So who would like to go first?
Good morning, everyone. Habari zenyu? I don't know the Ghanaian one. My name is Grace Mutungu, or Bomu. I am an associate at the Kenya ICT Action Network, which is a multi-stakeholder platform for people and institutions interested in ICT policy reform.
Good morning. I am Peter Asarinyama. Let me say bonjour, akwaba, and then habari. I'm Peter Asarinyama from Pan-African University in Cameroon. I'm going to share an overview on the trends in online regulation in Africa. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Bonjour tout le monde. It's my great pleasure to be here. My name is Xian Hong. I work at UNESCO. I want to thank CIPESA Media Foundation organizer to invite us. What I'm going to present is our new project, which has been around for some time to develop internet universality indicators to help the national actors, stakeholders to assess the internet development and policies. Shall I present now? Yes, and I wish my colleague can put on my slides. Yes, my PowerPoint on UNESCO indicators. Thank you.
No, just.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes. Sorry for that. Okay, good. How many minutes do I have? 10? Okay. Okay, my first question to you is, have you ever heard about the internet universality concept? Please raise your hand to me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. 6, 7, 8, 9. Thank you. Thank you. So it seems quite unnecessary. I will go through it quickly to give you an idea what is about it. Next slide, please. So what is the internet universality? Why we do this? Because the internet is an elephant in the room for long. We need to advise our member states actor to draw a big picture about the policies. That's why in 2015, our member states, 195, including all the African states, has endorsed a new position, which we call the Rome Principles of Internet Universality. We advocate 4 fundamental principles. We believe Internet should be governed in a manner respecting human rights. Internet should be open. Internet should be accessed by all. Internet should be driven by a multi-stakeholder governance model. Next, please. So ultimate goal is to advise our member state to use the internet, contribute to the sustainable development agenda at the national level, and also to promote those international standards, to identify the gaps and challenges at the national level, to what extent they have been respected in developing the internet. Certainly, our indicators are very sensitive to promote gender equality and empowering children, including also the people with disabilities. Next slide, please. This is how we did it. I just be very brief. And thanks to the financial support from the Swedish International Development Agency, as a support from the ISOC and also ICANN, we were able to commission a very strong research consortium led by APC to have undergone a global inclusive consultation, to organize many events, including Africa. And in summer, we just did 7 countries pre-testing and piloting, including in Senegal and Nigeria. So could you just go through the next slide? Yeah, this is the scales we have done on the consultation. And next slide, please. The physical meeting, and the red part, you see that what I did in the African Internet Forum last year. And next slide, please. Yeah, that's the piloting. And then, next slide. Yes. Here we go. Here's a product. After all, we have developed 5+1 categories of indicators. One root is based on the Rome principle I just mentioned. We have 5 categories of indicators measuring human rights, which is R, measuring the openness of internet, measuring accessibility and access of internet, measuring the multi-stakeholder participation. Plus, we have developed a cross-cutting dimension of indicators because internet issues are so broad and many issues which need to handle the cross-cutting to all the 4 Rome principles. That's why we added one additional theme to it, such as gender equality, such as children, such as cybersecurity, and sustainable development, plus the ethical dimensions of the internet ICTs. To contextualize all these measurements along the Rome principle, we also proposed contextual indicators to set out a scene to look at what bigger factors in a country, economic situation or equality situation, governance model, etc., to identify what has been impacting the policy options for national policymakers. So next slide, please. The structure of indicators is a little bit complicated because every theme is complicated. We have identified key questions to address each category of indicators, and then we try to figure out the evidence to show they exist or not, to what extent, or to assist the national stakeholder to measure them. We also provide a list of data and the sources, as well as the means and for verifications. And next slide, please. So in total, we have developed 303 indicators to measure the elephant in the room. It's a lot. So we have also identified 109 core indicators to fit the need when a country is lack of sufficient resource to conduct a full assessment for 300 indicators. So we do provide a minimized scale assessment for the stakeholders. Next slide, please. So under contextual indicator, as I just mentioned, we providing some environmental factors for each country to assess, which means that we are really not to comparing the states because every country is different, have different context. Internet are really developing in a different environment. Next slide, please. Under rights character of the indicators, we have identified 6 areas to measure. And first, it's overarching question. We are actually measuring every category of indicators, whether rights or openness or access or multi-stakeholderism. We will look at what kind of legal and regulatory frameworks are in place. It's a very strong policy-oriented indicators, as you can see. And in specific to the human rights, we have prioritized freedom expression to be measured online, including press freedom, freedom for media, including the safety of journalists, bloggers, etc. And the second area is to access the freedom of information, how public can access the public held information. And third one is about the freedom of association and participation online. And next one is about privacy and the personal data protection in the country. And last one is broader about economic and social and cultural rights. Next slide, please. Under openness category of indicators, in addition to the policies, we look at the technical openness, which means free and open source software, the access to knowledge. And we measure the economic openness, competitiveness of markets, entry, and diverse choices of services, of devices in the national market. We also look at the open content, which means that how it relates to the net neutrality issue, is measuring the copyright policy. And the last one is open data and open government. How governments are making their information and service widely accessible by the public. How many minutes do I have left? Okay, next slide, please. Access is a big bunch of indicators. We look at connection in terms of the technology coverage and also geographic. We look at their service, are they affordable? Can the grassroots access the internet? And equitable access, between the countryside and city, between north and south, between the man and woman, and between the different social groups, are they all able to access? Certainly, we also have focused on content, language, and capacities, the softer part of the access, which are often ignored. We want to make sure that at a certain country, they have good quality local content which can be accessed through their local language and in script. I think that's also making much sense to Africa context. Next slide, please. And the last Rome category indicator is multi-stakeholder, which is distinct from rest part of the mostly to measure to what extent in a national policy consultation and policy-making process, how they get involved the different stakeholders in the society, ranging from government to civil society, NGOs, to private sector, to technical community individuals involved in this discussion. And also to measure how the national actors can shape and participate in the regional and international processes. And I think FIFA Africa is a wonderful example of regional international discussion, which we have seen so much active participation. That's also what we are measuring. Next slide, please. The cross-cutting category, these are broader themes on gender, digital divide, on the children, young people, on the sustainable development and cybersecurity. And last one, it's a very much looking forward indicator to see to what extent a state is ready to reflect the potential risks and the new trends, implications, ethics of the internet and its fast development, such as the issue of artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, how are impacting countries, particularly in Africa. I think I'm almost finishing on the last slide. And next step is really action, action, action. We got a very good product. I'm looking forward that more and more African countries can find it useful, can use it to assess their national internet policies. And we are getting this tool, this research indicator to be validated by IPDC Council in November, a month also. So we are starting to implement at national level. That's why I'm also with my colleague Hamid Yakub, based in Ghana office. We are convening a workshop tomorrow at 11:30, room 1, to discuss further how we implement in African countries. So if you have interest to use Internet Universality Indicator in your country, please join with us. We can discuss further. Thank you.
Before she takes her seat, do we have any question for her? Just one. No. So my question, how would you like African countries to interact with these indicators?
Thank you very much. You know, we have done this for you. We don't assume any ownership of this indicator. We wish that the internet policy and the development indicator can be guided by these fundamental principles of human rights, of openness, of access, universal access by all, and benefiting everyone in the society, and also can be driven by a inclusive process by all stakeholders in the society. As I have perceived that there's so many challenges, I agree with many of that is being said by my previous speakers, that we need to have an empirical and scientific methodology to assess this complex technology and capture the faster development of the internet ICT to make sure it can play a constructive role in the national sustainable development agenda. That's really the goal. I'm here to, I want you to know that it's a tool which can be used by everyone, by every country, I mean, by every stakeholder which can find something relevant to you, not only on human rights, but also look at how human rights relates to the access, how openness can be constructive to protect the human rights. And then also think about if you don't have a good participatory, inclusive governance model in place, it's difficult to protect any rights or to have any sort of openness of the internet. So that's a very holistic approach to address the internet policies.
Thank you very much, Yu Zhenghong. Who would like to go next?
I think it's really
Oh, now there are questions? Okay, just one question. And this question is from Uganda. I told you that Ugandans are very loud. I could hear them from the front.
Thank you very much. I am Jova Kamateka from Uganda. In the first presentation, we would want to believe that internet freedom means that there should be no bounds. But the last presentation, she has mentioned at least the need for regulatory framework. How can that be effected? Because Onyango Obo even said that the big men fear lack of control. Why would they fear lack of control? Because in other, we have rules and regulations for engagement, but with internet, it is freedom for all. And we know that there is abuse. We know, for example, for gender and children concerns, that there is stalking, that there is piracy. So how can we ensure that there is responsible use of the internet?
Thank you very much. If you're going to say something, please say your name, because some people are tweeting all of this and they would like to know your name and where you're from.
Thank you. My name is Rami Wake. I'm from Nigeria. I work for Digital Sense Africa. Thank you for the presentation. My question is just a very straightforward one. I would like to know what's the demography of those who participated in the indicator within those countries that you mentioned. Thank you.
It was for me. I'm sorry, could you repeat for the second question? Yeah, I think the first question I understood. The second one I didn't get it very well. Could you please?
Those who participated in your survey.
Demographic indicators. Participate. Okay. Thank you for both questions. I wish I understood you correctly. The first one is about internet freedom and how it relates to the regulation. I'd like to clarify, in the internet indicator, as I just presented, we are not promoting regulations, but we are measuring, in reality, to what extent the existing legal policies, regulations, are adhering to the international standards of human rights, of openness, access, etc. Which means that when a national government, parliament is making a policy, they need to have a check whether certain policy is not violating those international agreements, whether the impact of human rights has been considered by the policymakers. I certainly agree that internet is technology. It's like everything. It's like a double-edged sword, as we said. And so far, it has developed for 30 years. We have seen, I started as an internet enthusiast. I had thought the internet is changing everything. It's bringing the human being to a wonderful world. But after so many years, as a previous speaker mentioned, the internet has been instrumentalized, has been weaponized before it can really serve as a tool to develop. I do perceive some risks that for us to develop smarter strategy to govern the internet and to prevent the risks, including the cyber security, including to empower our children, and also, again, to prevent the existing divide continue to extend in the digital age, such as the gender divide, and also many other challenges. Maybe other speakers can talk better than me, like the current challenge of misinformation and hate speech or content-related issues. But I do see that we need a comprehensive consideration to look at our internet-related policies, to don't throw away the baby together with the water in the bathtub. That's my last word. And about the second question that you're asking me about the participation of internet governance, the democratic aspect. I don't know if you're asking for at the international level or the national level, but
sorry, I have to come up again. My question, actually, sorry, my name is Remy Mweke for the records, a Nigerian. The question is about the demography that were involved in the indicator that you shared with us, in terms of male, female, gender, youth, and all not. What's the categorization that we engaged in that across the African countries that this indicator took place, including Nigeria, of course? Thank you.
If you ask me this question, I will say that I don't know, because that's why we are developing this indicator. But we want to measure, want to know what exactly is the situation on the ground. To what extent the different social groups, men and women, and different ethnic groups, the community are now getting involved in the internet policies. Because so far, at the policy-making level, we found there's a lack of evidence policy dialogue. Many policies are made just subjectively without doing empirical research to look at the situation, to look at the needs of people, to look at the gaps existing in the country. That's why we are going to invite every country to participate in this global survey, to provide your country assessment, to provide your aggregated data in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Kenya, here in Ghana, so we can have a bigger picture. We can know better about where we are, and then to set a direction for the future. Thank you for your question. I'd like to discuss further maybe tomorrow on the methodological issue. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I believe everybody in this room believes that the internet has come to stay. In as much as we cannot do without food and water, this current generation, we cannot do without the internet. And research has it that the internet is a powerful tool for development. When you look at our educational sectors, when you look at health, when you look at governance, when you look at all endeavors of humanity, you could see the impact of the internet. Even the media, the fourth arm of the government, has also been impacted by the internet. This has enabled them to enhance their capacity as watchdogs over government, to enhance accountability and transparency, especially among government and society in general. However, governments across the world have intensified their effort to regulate the internet. Why? They use excuses that the internet played a role in the 11 September incident in the US. And in the case of Africa, the Arab Spring. We can see from Africa that now governments are more afraid of citizens when we look at the scenario from the Arab Spring. And therefore, they are coming up with draconian laws that are very tough for citizens to access the internet, have access to freedom online, privacy. They hide behind jargons. What are the jargons they use? They claim for national security. They claim it is for the sake of public order. They claim it is for the sake of protecting the rights of citizens. They use these jargons to come into places, policies that are very tough. Let's go into Cameroon, we go to Rwanda. Even in Benin, the finance minister was heard saying in a YouTube video, if you speak against the government, you pay more. This is what they are doing. They are beginning to become afraid. They have become afraid of the citizens, and therefore they are finding ways to restrict citizens from accessing the internet. However, when we look at all the scenarios in Africa, we have state governments that have signed their signatories or have ratified certain national, international, and regional conventions and protocols. We have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We have, when we come to African Charter on Human and People's Rights, among others. If you have signed into this, the implementation should ensure that these protocols, they seek for accountability. They ensure that citizens have access to internet. They ensure that the right to information is being implemented. So if you have government, you have signed to this, and you are coming back with draconian laws, then what is the implication? So the session we are going to have later is going to be the trends in online regulation in Africa. What policies are in place? What are governments doing in Africa to restrict, to cripple people's access to the internet? So the session will digest, critique the trends we are having in Africa, and it will just oppose the past, the current, and then the future scenario to international conventions like our constitutions and among others. So the session will end in such a way that we are going to go ahead with actions. What can we do then to ensure that the internet become free for everybody? Thank you very much. But before I end, let's not forget Darren Walker, the president for Ford Foundation. He said the internet is the only platform on which justice can be fought and won. Thank you very much.
We're going to be having a session called Consumer Rights Protection in Africa. So this is turning it the other way around and talking about the people or the users of the internet. I know many of you are wondering who consumers are. Consumers are Africans, because Africans are largely consumers of the internet and not creators of the internet. There are some few really good cases of creation on the internet, but we can safely say that Africans are largely consumers on the internet. And other than just consuming products that have been made elsewhere, we are also consuming consumer rights protection mechanisms that have been largely made elsewhere and for different contexts. And so what we want to do in this session and in other sessions that are dealing with consumer rights is to just expand our imagination and think, how can we better protect consumer rights in this digital age? Can we protect maybe the right to choice, having more choice by having more African languages in the digital products that we are consuming? Can we protect maybe the right to information by having, what are those things that lawyers make for every product we are consuming? Terms and conditions. Can we have these terms and conditions in more interesting and easier ways that are easier for us to understand. And so we're going to be discussing this in terms of privacy, gender, cybersecurity. I know for many of the East Africans in the room, you're always reminded that security begins with. But is this really something we can say applies in the digital age? Can you really protect yourself and be fully secure in the digital age, or do you need some other help from maybe the person who develops the product, or the rights, the duty bearer, the government, in order to have like a secure environment? And when we look at, and my brother touched on that, when you look at the trends in consumer protection, you'll find that many regulators start by the question of what are we consuming? We are first going to regulate what we are consuming. And so it's always, in many countries, it's a question of controlling content in the name of maybe protecting children, or in the name of maybe protecting women and other minorities in society. But is this really the right question? Or should we also look at the question of how safe the environment is, or how, you know, how much choice we have when the government, for example, says, you're consuming too much WhatsApp and Facebook, we are going to curtail your consumption by adding a few taxes for you before you consume that, content. So you're all welcome to this session and to other sessions that are discussing the issue. There's one session on Friday from 9 to 10:30. There are other sessions that have already taken place, like there are people who came earlier to learn how to measure consumer protection and other human rights in processes like the Universal Periodic Review and other such processes where countries are measured for how well they are respecting rights. And then there are other people who came earlier and they tried to translate some of the content we have into local languages, and they were running localization labs, and we'll have them in the session just explaining to us the experience in changing the internet into more African languages. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any question? All right, if there are no questions at all, I would like to thank you very much for sharing. Hugh Jianghong from UNESCO, Grace Bomu from KICTANET, and Peter Azare from Pan-African University. We'll be getting into the next session. If you'd like to take your seats, we'd like to once again thank you for sharing and setting the stage for the next, for the discussions that will take place for the rest of today and tomorrow. We'd like to get into the next session, since there are no questions for the three of them. Is there a question? No. Okay, so we're going to go out for our tea break. It's 30 minutes long, but when we come back, we'll be going to our breakaway sessions. There'll be one session in this room, and that session will be on gender-based violence online. That will be the session that will take place here. If you're not coming for this one, there is another session in room 1. That room is called Odwira. So don't go looking for room 1, look for Odwira. The session in that room will be Zone 9 bloggers, and they'll be talking about their experiences of censorship, repression, and surveillance. The next session, if you're not going for any of these two, will be in room 2, which is called Kundum. Kundum, I say that again. And it's about big data to open data, key ingredients for civic technology and social innovation. So those are the 3 sessions. Main hall, which is here, GBV Online. Room 1, which is Odwira, Zone 9 bloggers. Room 2, Kundum, big data to open data. The tea is downstairs, ground floor. I would like to ask that all the moderators that will be taking care of those sessions, please keep time so that we allow for as much engagement as we can. Enjoy your tea.
working. So you are welcome. It is my pleasure to be here at the Internet Freedom in Africa Forum. I would like to thank the Media Foundation for West Africa for hosting this conference here in Ghana, where ICT is flourishing in terms of connectivity and innovation. The internet is growing very quickly in Ghana, and I would like to recognize all industry players who contribute to providing these services across the globe. I also like to take this opportunity to welcome you all to this all-important forum, which seeks to create a platform for deliberations on trends within the internet ecosystem. Today, the rapidly expanding use of the internet and the digital platforms in Africa has given true meaning to the rights of hundreds of millions of people across the continent to seek, receive, and import information and ideas of all kinds, regardless of frontiers. Ladies and gentlemen, it has brought cyberspace to the doorsteps of people, whether they are high and mighty or low and disadvantaged, enabling them to engage actively in public discourse on political issues, as well as on governance, social and economic developments, among others, both at the local, national, regional, and international levels. The spread of information networks is forming a new nervous system for our planet. When something happens on another continent, the rest of us learn about it in real time, and we can respond in real time as well. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, let us all bear in mind that the more freely information flows, the stronger societies become. Bearing in mind that access to information helps citizens hold their own government, accountable, generate new ideas, encourage creativity and entrepreneurship. My belief in this ground truth is what brings me here today. Our government, the government of the NPP, has shown its commitment in developing a solid and dependable ICT infrastructure by laying the Eastern Corridor fiber optic backbone, which runs from Ho in the south to Boku in the north, branching off at Yendi to Tamale. This infrastructure covers 27 districts and towns within the coverage area of the fiber optic, which the infrastructure is intended to extend nationwide. We also intend to extend the infrastructure across all districts of the country to enable us provide national data center facilities and connect all public institutions to a single shared communication and computing infrastructure in order to facilitate efficient delivery of government services to businesses and others. As a result of this, providers of internet services are able to offer some impressive fast internet connections to consumers. Currently in Ghana, we have 4G internet speed, and there are about 5 telecom companies whose services are patronized, taking into consideration their network strength and also the location of the consumer. Ladies and gentlemen, the Eastern Corridor fiber optic backbone network is expected to attract huge investments in the communities that lie along its path. The project will improve the socioeconomic benefits of the communities within the catchment areas. Some of the benefits expected include attract new businesses in the communities, access to information for information and educational research, bridging of the digital divide between the rural and urban folks, reduce rural to urban migration through job creation, and improve healthcare through telemedicine, among others. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the government continues to attach great importance to ensuring that the telecommunications and ICT facilities, which can now be described as a basic necessity of life, are available in all parts of the country. And in this regard, the Rural Telephony Project was launched in Abenaso in the Eastern region this year to connect the town and its surrounding communities with ICT facilities and telecommunication services. You will agree with me that expanding telephony connectivity services to rural communities in the country will help open rural communities to opportunities for the development of skills, knowledge, as well as the growth of businesses and the local economies. In conclusion, I would like to employ the telecommunication industry and other ISPs to continue deploying their services to rural communities in order to create an all-inclusive ICT ecosystem in Ghana. I wish to thank you for coming, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Honorable Vincent Savao-Dutai, who is the Deputy Minister of Communications. We appreciate that you took the time away from all of the engagements that you have to share this moment with us. Well, let's take our... We'd like to have a question. Okay.
Sorry for bringing this a little late. My name is Hans Ngala. I'm a Cameroonian student journalist in South Africa. My first question goes about the film that you promised to show us about the internet shutdown. Nothing has been said about that again. And then my question goes to Grace. You mentioned something about using African languages to be able to reduce the degree of censorship on the internet. So I was just wondering, like, now that we don't have any universal African language, how is that going to be? And given that some of the people that do speak the languages can't read them, how is that going to be possible, you know, to make content more accessible for them if they wish to, if someone wants to read it? And also to Peter Asare about the freedom for internet access. I was just wondering, like, we do understand that it's good for the internet to be free, but isn't it necessary for the governments to have a little degree of censorship for national security reasons indeed? And how, to what degree should that censorship be? Thanks.
Grace will be answering your question, but in the sessions that follow, she did mention that she would have those. Now, the movie that I promised you, we finally managed to download it. We will not show it right now because you need your tea. Do you not need your tea? Yes, so I would like you to go for your tea, but you're here for the next 2 days at least. In those 2 days, you will watch that movie. All right, let's enjoy our tea.